Party status is not the benchmark. The benchmark was official opposition, and she missed the benchmark. That was the benchmark. Win your seat so that you have a seat in the legislature so you can actually stand up and talk. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Radical Center. Now, we know you did not miss us too much because it has not been too long of a period of time since you've seen us, because we just recently did the live broadcast for election night, and we thank everybody who joined us for that. It's been a week. It's been a week in Ontario politics. Lots of things have shifted. Lots of things have changed. There was an election, as I'm sure everybody knows. If you're watching this show, you probably know there was an election a couple of days ago. And Doug Ford won that election, a third consecutive majority government, very, very difficult to attain. And he managed to do that. The NDP kind of stayed around the same spot that they were in before, and the Liberals kind of also stayed around the same spot that they were in before, except they did win official party or they did gain official party status. Fortunately, the leader of the Liberal Party lost her own seat in her hometown of Mississauga, where she served as mayor for almost a decade. We are not going to get too much into that because we did talk a lot about it a few days ago, and I'm sure you're hearing lots of coverage. But Cody, how are you feeling? First of all, that broadcast was fun. I think we should do it again and again and again and again. And we should always have people popping by it. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, that was really fun. I had a lot of fun too. We were discussing that before we came on air that we were actually really glad we had nothing to do with this election because it would have been miserable. Whether you're, the PCs, the Liberals, or the NDP, it would have been miserable. But I think the most important thing that I took away from last night, aside from the fun, and, we joked around a lot about a lot of different things, is that we really accomplished last night what we set out to do in this podcast, because we had people with conservative voices, with liberal voices, with New Democrat voices. And, at so many different points in the podcast, we either agreed with each other, we disagreed with each other. We had conservative voices agreeing with the New Democrats and liberals agreeing with New Democrats. And it was great. It was so much fun. And I hope that we do it again.
And that is the point of the Radical Center. It's where everybody finds something to agree upon sometimes and disagree.
And just so I'll throw it to you. From when we got off the air last night to now, is there anything that has changed that you think is notable in the last not even 24 hours?
Well, a couple of things. I've noticed that there's a little bit more talk online about whether the Liberal leader should resign or remain as leader. It's just party chatter at this point. I expect that's going to get louder over the next week, couple weeks, 3 weeks. I would say we're going to be hearing a lot of that conversation in March and April. And then we'll see what ends up happening. It's really interesting because this is a situation that's never really happened before, because the Liberal Party has never been in such a terrible in such shape before, right? Even going into the election, having been third place, no official party status, really just not in a good spot. And then you have this leader who everybody expected is going to be this great savior of the party, and then the leader falls short herself, unable to pick up her own seat, but at the same time still, they pick up a few other seats, which if you look at every seat, I really believe that there's local factors that drove that result rather than the leadership or the central campaign, if you look at each seat individually. But we won't do that today.
Yeah.
But it's just a weird outcome. Like, it's a weird outcome for a leader to pick up seats but lose her own in her own city. Like, I don't even know what to make of that.
Yeah, I don't, it's something to process, is something to think about over time, right? Mm-hmm. It did help that, Sylvia Gualtieri, she had the full force of the Patrick Brown machine in that riding. When I woke up this morning on my way to work, I listened to all three of their speeches. And the
Mm-hmm.
one thing that I noticed is, Doug Ford was his typical protect Ontario, blah, 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 blah. Marit Stiles, she conceded, and then she said, I'm willing to work with the PC government to deliver for Ontario. And I thought that that was a fantastic speech because she put her arm out and she said, I'm willing to work with you guys. And if Doug Ford doesn't take her up on that offer, I think it's genuine, then, that's on him. But Bonnie did not accept defeat. It was not a concession. Yeah.
I didn't even congratulate him.
No, she didn't congratulate anybody. She just said, she basically said we won when
They didn't.
they didn't. They barely achieved she
Yeah.
barely achieved party status.
By the way, party status isn't something to like get really excited about. Like it's not really that big of a deal. It just means like you get to be a party in the legislature and you don't have to sit in as independents, which I guess gives them more opportunities to speak and all of that. But not I don't I'd have to look at the rules closer, but I don't even think it's that much. So it's kind of like that's not the benchmark. Party status is not the benchmark. The benchmark was official opposition. And she missed the benchmark. That was the benchmark. Win your seat so that you have a seat in the legislature so you can actually stand up and talk. Because otherwise no one is going to hear what you're saying. And even if you are there, they're not going to hear what you're saying. But at least you get to be somewhere near a microphone, right? And 2, get to official opposition. So once again, you can stand up and talk, right? This is a waste of time. This whole, we got to official party status. It's a complete waste of time. So I think there's a little bit of a high that's going on among everybody who are like, oh my God, we made a crack in the case, we got some positive outcome, no matter how small. So I mean, it's good for them. They're looking at progress, but the benchmark was win your seat, win official opposition, and that benchmark was not achieved. They missed the goal. And I'm sorry to say this, but I don't understand how a leader of a party can remain after not winning her own seat in her own city where she was a mayor for almost 10 years.
Like I said last night, like at the very least, being extremely generous, it's not credible at all, right? You have no voice in the legislature. The only voice that you have is your caucus, and they're from a seat perspective in the legislature, they are leaderless.
They don't need her, right? Like they don't need you if you're not in there. You can't lead them if you're not in. What's she gonna do? Lead them over text? WhatsApp group? Like how are you gonna lead them?
You could, because I know in Brampton City Council, when Linda Jeffrey was mayor, she did a lot of leading by text. So I'll just say that. But I think honestly,
caucus WhatsApp group.
Yeah, the WhatsApp group. Yeah. But I thought about it a lot today, and I think that the NDP have a big opportunity here because Merritt, this was her first test. She wasn't going to win government, but she retained opposition. And if she is stretching out her hand to the premier saying, I'm willing to work with you, then I think that in the future, she can moderate the party to a point where, like we talk about the federal Conservative Party sometimes. Sometimes Pierre is too ideological, and the NDP can be that way, right? So I think there's an opportunity for the New Democrat Party to go even further in Ontario, right? Ian was on here last night, and he said that, if you're the Ontario Liberal Party lost 3 elections in a row. maybe the first one didn't count, but the second and the third one,
Mm-hmm.
that's a big problem, right? And
It's
how do future voters take you seriously? So
it's not
that's
even the fact that they've lost elections. Parties lose elections all the time. They're supposed to lose election. It's a cycle. It's how badly they're losing the elections. It's how poorly they're doing in areas that they should have significant support. The 905s, the GTA just in general, some Toronto ridings, right? Why did they lose Eglinton Lawrence when there was no NDP candidate? Can someone
right,
explain this to me? Like, can
right.
we get a scientist involved in this? Like, can someone go study this? Because I don't understand why you'd lose Eglinton Lawrence when the NDP candidate removed herself to get out of the way so that the Liberal can win. I don't understand that, right? It's not just that they're losing. Parties lose elections. That's part of the cycle. It's part of the process. It's how badly they're losing, and they're just not resonating. I mean, one day maybe we can have an episode on all the mistakes. I was thinking I'm gonna actually at least do a tweet about it. I think there were
Yeah.
significant mistakes that were made by Bonnie and her group and her team leading up to this election and during this election that impacted the result quite heavily.
Especially you went into detail last night about it too in Mississauga where we live, where there is a significant portion of Mississauga is the Muslim community.
Yeah. Over
And
100,000 voters in Mississauga are from the Muslim community. Like, you can't ignore demographics. You can't ignore important issues for people. And you know what? They may like you on so many different things, and then one issue just turns them off, and then they just won't, and then people just won't give you a chance. It's a very complicated thing. It's very complex to be able to win a government. But I find that, and even the policies, understanding the issues, choosing issues to run on that are significantly impacting Ontarians enough. And to be honest, I think there is a reality to the fact that I was on Twitter earlier and something just stood out to me, and it was Dominic LeBlanc with a picture of Doug Ford, where they're
I
like, they
saw that. Yeah.
essays, yeah, and he's like, "Thank you for your friendship, congratulations." Da, da, da. The Liberals like him, right? The federal the finance minister, who's the federal Liberal Party, and Dominic is a pretty significant figure in the Liberal Party. We're not talking about some backbencher or even a
He's the
minister.
minister of everything.
Dominic LeBlanc is the minister of everything. He is, I used to joke that, because he used to be Justin Trudeau's babysitter. I used to joke that he never stopped being Justin Trudeau's babysitter. He's still his babysitter,
Yeah.
right? So to have Dom actually go out there and put that out in public for a conservative premier, right? After the defeat of a very well-known Liberal. Like, this is not someone who Bonnie's not someone who recently joined the Liberal Party. Bonnie and I have a very similar experience where she was a young Liberal. She's been a Liberal her whole life, right? So if you're seeing that, you're kind of like, what's going on here? They just seem to like him, So there's a lot of factors at play, but certainly lots of mistakes were made along the way. I can't see how she's going to be able to stick around, but time will tell, and we will watch for it. We'll tell you more about it. But today wasn't supposed to be
And
about.
the last
Yeah.
thing that I'm going to say, because again, we are doing a lot of criticizing of the Liberal Party and Bonnie.
Mm-hmm.
During this election campaign, we extended the invitation to the three main party leaders. We gave them the opportunity to come on.
Mm-hmm.
Mard Stiles was the only one who accepted. We had Graham McGregor pop by for a few seconds last night. And in the future, it's going to be the same way.
Mm-hmm.
If there is a Liberal out there who's watching this, who wants to come on and explain themselves, we will give you the platform.
Yes, we
Right?
will actually invite them. We're going to reach out to
Right.
a few, especially of the newly elected Liberals, to understand what's going on with them, and we'll see if they'd like to come on. So thank you for that reminder. I will get working on it. Today wasn't supposed to be about provincial politics, although,
It wasn't supposed to be about Eminem either, but you
no,
tweeted it out, so
I've got rap lyrics coming
yeah.
coming out now. There's a federal leadership race that is still ongoing. We're very sorry to Mark Carney and Chrystia Freeland and Karina Gould, because we got really sidetracked with the provincial election. But I think everybody understands that a provincial election is like, especially an Ontario provincial election, is like a really big deal. So
Yep.
we're very sorry
And
that
we invited all of them too. We invited all the leadership candidates.
we invited Frank Bayliss.
Okay, we
And
Invited
Mark
Frank.
Carney,
Yes.
which we haven't heard back from either one of them. We would have invited the rest if we at least got one. Do you want to
Okay,
invite?
I'm wrong. I'm wrong. I'll take the fall. If I don't edit this out, then I'll take the fall for it.
Okay, sounds good. But anyway,
I misspoke. I misspoke.
We are reaching
Mark
out
Carney.
to people. We're trying to get you more interviews. That will be a lot of fun. But let's get back into this leadership race. It is happening. It is almost done. Lots has happened over the past few weeks when we've been kind of super busy. And let's get into it. Ruby Dhalla got disqualified. She didn't even know this was happening. This kind of became quite dramatic. She was apparently on some show. She was doing she was on air recording something, and all of a sudden the person she was speaking to tells her, I just got an email from the Liberal Party, or I got a notification of somewhere that says you got disqualified. And she was completely shocked, and she's accused of a whole bunch of stuff, and she tried to appeal it, and her appeal didn't go anywhere. What do you think of this?
This is a very complicated issue, to say the least. The question is what was Ruby Dhalla trying to accomplish with her campaign?
Mm-hmm.
Because she was certainly somebody she has a history in the Liberal Party. She was a Liberal member of Parliament in Brampton for however many of years. But the question is what did she want to accomplish with it? And I don't think, she had a campaign platform that criticized her own party. And that caught fire, obviously, with some conservatives. And some people in the Liberal Party saw that as, I'm not going to say the word traitor, because I think that's the wrong word.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that it turned off a lot of people in the Liberal Party because it was giving the Conservative Party ammunition that they really did not need at the time. When it comes to these allegations, I will say that not the allegations themselves, but the way it went down is very similar to what happened to Patrick Brown in the Conservative Party race, where he was disqualified. There wasn't really a, I would say, fair, open, transparent process. And it left a lot of voters feeling disenfranchised, including myself, where I got my ballot in the mail, as I said this a million times. I got my ballot in the mail, and I protest voted for Patrick Brown because that's who I was going to vote for. You took that away from me. But again, I would like to see more. I want to see more. I want to see why they disqualified her. But you have a completely different perspective because you served on the party executive. So I'll let you give your opinion on it.
A different perspective in the sense that I don't know what she was trying to accomplish with her campaign. She was running a very, very, very aggressive campaign. It didn't come across as she was running to be the leader of the Liberal Party. It came across as she was running to take over the Liberal Party. And, I don't know. It just didn't sit well, right? It didn't sit well with me. I don't know if that's the reason, though. She was out there, she was attacking the front runner like pretty heavily, right? And and she was saying some stuff. She said some stuff about deportations. She said some stuff about things that don't appeal to liberals, things that appeal to right-wing conservatives. Like, we're not even talking about the center here. right? So it was odd to see someone who is running to become the leader of a party that's supposed to be centrist, and some of the things that she was talking about and the style in which she was running the campaign was appealing more to the right-wing conservatives. I could understand that you have to protect the brand, you have to protect the party, right? And I'm not saying that that's why they did it. I don't know why they did it. I mean, I don't know past what they put out.
None of us do, and it seems like more of a back and forth, and there seems to be no clarity.
Yeah, I mean, a political party is a club upon itself. Like it's a club. They make up their own rules. If the board decides they don't want her, like the board decides they don't want her, right? And if they say, okay, these are the rules that you broke, and we see that you broke them, that's kind of the end of the conversation. Now there's other things about like give her back her 50,000 or whatever, like that. Those are separate things.
Yeah, and I don't think that's gonna happen.
Yeah, yeah.
The
Those are
party right. The party executive has a lot of power,
yes.
right? This is,
They're
like
a
you
lot
said,
of
it's a right. It's a lot of power. Some people don't like it, some people like it, but at the end of the day, just like some people want proportional representation versus first past the post, that is the system that we have. And the only thing
if you're a business owner and you have a corporation, right? Think about, you know, the directors or the board of directors of your corporation, right? They get to make the rules. They get to make those decisions. That's basically it. As long as it doesn't contravene any laws, and it falls within the all of the laws of the applicable laws that it abides by or supposed to abide by. I think political parties are corporations in terms of what it
yeah,
kind of.
I think they are, yeah.
That's just basically how things work. So if they've decided that they're going to not allow her to run because of X, Y, and Z, then and she can appeal that, and she could, and I'm sure she feels it's unfair or whatever it is. But my perspective is she was running a very aggressive too right-wing campaign for your average liberal, which was probably attracting too much attention from the right wing, and it just wouldn't be good for the party. They haven't come out and said that that's the reason. They've given the reasons that they're going to say, and as Am said, they're not going to be issuing any more statements on that, and that they can do that. Like that's the reality. We have to understand how our democratic system works. You have the right to run for office, you have the right to vote, but you don't have the right to run a political party.
Right. And
That's
the
that's something
evidence
you
of
have to jump
this,
a lot of hoops for.
yeah, the evidence of that
Yeah.
is when I think it was Tony Barrett. He was the former MPP for Haldeman Norfolk. When he resigned, he wanted his assistant, Bobby Ann Brady, to become the PC candidate, and that was overridden by Doug Ford, and he made the decision.
Yeah.
And guess what? Last night, Bobby Ann Brady blew out the PCs and got reelected as an independent with over 60% of the vote. So if Ruby Dhalla, at the end of the day, if Ruby Dhalla really wants to take what she believes and bring it to Parliament, her only option is to ask to run for the Conservatives. And if she gets elected, whatever. If she doesn't, then that's it. So
Yeah, that is a potential outcome of all of this. That would make sense. Although I'm not sure if she's looking to be a backbencher or even a cabinet minister. I think she was looking to become the actual leader, and she was hoping that she would actually become prime minister. I don't know. I think the reality is if you're in a position like that, and it depends on how much you want to keep fighting. But we'll let Ruby decide. We'll talk about it if there's more updates. Basically, the moral of the story is this: the party executive is a very powerful body. and they get to make the rules, and even the leader has to follow those rules. Well, until the leader, well, leadership candidates have to follow those rules, because then when the leader becomes the leader, it's a
They
whole
can do
different
whatever they want. Yeah.
that's a whole different ballgame.
Right.
But yeah, so this is how it works. This is what it is. We wish Ruby the best of luck in whatever she decides to do in the future. Voting has began in the leadership race, right? So there is now 4 candidates. Mark, there's Christia Freeland, Mark Carney, Christia Freeland, Karina Gould, and Frank Bayliss, who I was extremely impressed with, by the way. I don't know how you felt about him, but I was quite impressed with him. I was surprised that he was never in cabinet, given his background and expertise and his ability to communicate and some of the ideas that he was talking about during the debate. But voting has started. It's safe to assume that Mark Carney is in the lead. What do you think? What do you think is going to happen in 7 days? March 10 days?
Yep.
9.
Well,
9 days. March 9th.
We're recording this on Friday.
Yeah.
It'll be on Sunday, March 9th, I believe. So that's 9 days-ish. 9 days-ish. Yeah, the math is mathing today. Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So what do you think is
It's
going to happen?
not, yeah. So I'll put it to you like this. Prime Minister designate Mark Carney is probably going to come in first. I'm not going to say whether it's going to be the first or second or third. I'm pretty sure it's going to be the first. But I said that about Bonnie Crombie, and look how that turned out. So we'll see. Things happen, right? Second place, probably Karina or Christia. I thought that it would be Christia, but I'm not really sure about that because Karina has grown into the role. She's a lot more likable. And when she's talking to you, she's not talking down to you like Christia. That is Christia's biggest problem is when she speaks, she's always talking down like a mother scolding her child for putting their hands in the cookie jar.
Yeah. Yeah.
But Frank
I've said that exact thing before. I've said that she comes across like a school principal who's disciplining you.
Yeah.
And nobody likes that.
And Frank Bayliss, I mean, we'll get into the debate and everything, but Frank Bayliss he's very good in French. Like I didn't watch the whole French debate, but very good in French, very good in English, and he seems to be just a normal guy, a normal businessman.
Yeah.
Right?
Which, as we know, is very popular from the Doug Ford experience in Ontario. So, that works out really well. I was really surprised because that personally, I didn't know very much about Frank. I think he was only there for 1 term and then he left. Maybe he didn't like the job. I don't know. But I was quite surprised to see that somebody like him wasn't in cabinet, throughout the Trudeau years. So very interesting to see that. We'll see how it goes. I look forward to Sunday. I think we have one more episode before we talk about that, before we wrap up that leadership race. There's a big controversy with Mr. Carney and Brookfield. And you want to tell us a little bit about that?
So back last year before Donald Trump took office, the company, I guess he was he was chair of the board of Brookfield, a company that I guess operates here in Canada, decided that they were going to move their head office to New York. And that happened before Donald Trump took office, roughly around the same time as Trump made his first tariff threats, is what people were saying. But the Conservatives are trying to latch onto this because Carney said after the debate, he kind of, and again, this is a learning curve, right? He's going from a
Private citizen
to a public person, and he stepped in it. And some people are saying he lied, but I mean, I'll leave that up to people to decide. But basically, he said he wasn't a part of that decision making. which was really a really bad way to word it, because after that, it came out from the media and from the conservatives, they jumped on it, that indeed he chaired the meeting when they decided. And then they tried to backpedal and they tried to say, well, they didn't officially do it until after Carney had left. So this is something that I think that the conservatives are going to try and latch on to, because they want to paint him just like the carbon tax, just like all these, the capital gains tax, all of these staples of the Liberal Party policy for the past 10 years that, the Mark Carney is saying that he would reverse as prime minister. They're trying to sow the seed of distrust.
Yes.
And people don't like dishonest politicians. So, I mean, we'll see if it works or not. I don't know. I think that's one issue, but I don't think that's the biggest piece of the puzzle.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I think you're absolutely right. They're trying to go after his believability, right? Whether people believe him, because you can make a whole lot of promises. Although I specifically think that he needs to get rid of the carbon tax before he goes into an election. The carbon tax cannot be an election promise. You don't want to have Mark Carney, listen to me. You don't want to talk about the carbon tax during the election. You want it to be done and over with. It's not on the books. It's canceled. It doesn't exist. Then when they talk about the carbon tax, you go, what carbon tax? What are you talking about?
Right.
It's gone. So,
and if he calls if
it's an election promise, that's where they're going to get him on. Can you believe this guy? Because he did this and he did this and he did this. And you know what? You dig into anybody's life, you're going to find something that they lied about or they did something about or whatever it is. And then it becomes a question of, he's saying all these things, but can you really believe him? So, Mark Carney, you're going to become prime minister before you go into an election. You're going to have a couple of days. The first thing you've got to do is get rid of the carbon tax and reverse the capital gains increase. Do those two things before you even think about going into an election, because you don't want to have this conversation during an election. You don't want the carbon tax to be a part of the conversation. You want this election to be about Donald Trump. And you want the election to be specifically focused on, we have a crisis that's coming, an economic crisis that's coming. I am an economist, not me, you. And you and Canadians need somebody at the wheel who knows exactly what they're doing. You can trust me. I know this. I can handle a crisis. This election, much like the Doug Ford election in Ontario, needs to be about leadership in a crisis, not about a carbon tax. And the way to change that, and the way to change the channel on the carbon tax, is to get rid of it completely before the election even begins.
Yes, and because what I was going to say is, if he doesn't, he can say all he wants that he's going to get rid of it. But if the rumors are true and he calls an election pretty much as soon as he becomes leader, the carbon tax will go up during the election, right? And once you're in an election, there is nothing you can do. If you try to call cabinet back and you try to reverse it during an election, that is not going to fly. That is going to fly.
He can't do that. Once he's in election, he's lost all control. You have no control during the election. You have control before the election. You are going to be prime minister. And the first question a voter is going to ask you when you say, I promise to get rid of the carbon tax. The first question a voter is going to ask you is, you're prime minister now. Why didn't you do it? Why are you at my door instead of getting rid of the carbon tax when you know we all want the carbon tax to be gone? It's extremely important. Please do not go into an election. I mean, not that I'm rooting for one person or another, but come on. You got to do this, do it properly. All right? I'm going to stop talking about this because I'm getting too emotional.
Yeah.
I'm getting worked up. The French and English debates. What went well, Cody?
So it wasn't really much of a debate. And I think that was actually a very smart strategy, to be honest with you. Because to have the entire family fighting in the kitchen over what's for dinner, essentially, before you're going to go into an election is not very good at all. So I think that it was a very good strategy for them.
Mm-hmm.
Find what they agree on, because I think that everybody and their brother's uncle has come to the conclusion that Mark Carney is going to be the leader. He's going to be the prime minister. And why would you fight about it? You're tearing yourselves down before an election. I did not watch the French debate. I tuned in for a few seconds, but like I said last night on the live stream, French is definitely not my strong suit. Mark Carney was criticized for one comment in particular.
Mm-hmm.
And he was criticized because during the debate, he did misspeak when he said that everybody agrees with Hamas.
Mm-hmm.
And Chris just stepped in and she pretty much saved his ASS.
Mm-hmm.
If I were the Conservatives, I wouldn't touch that with a 10-foot pole. I seen on social media that clip was going around, and I thought it was really, really stupid because they were focusing on the Hamas part of it. But he misspoke.
Yeah, he used the wrong what's the thing?
Wrong grammar, wrong
what is it?
whatever.
Not an adjective. What is it? What are these things? On and what are they called? Whatever. Someone, maybe an English teacher can
But he
tell me
misspoke. Okay, he misspoke. He is bad. He's not bad, but he's not as good at French as the rest of them.
Yeah.
That's the issue, because listen, when we get to a general election, if it's in March or April or whatever, there is no time for him to drastically prove his French. But if you're fighting for seats in Quebec and you want to drag the Liberals down in Quebec as the Conservatives, Pierre Poilievre is good in French. And then if you put Francois Blanchette and you have Mark Carney in the middle taking oncoming fire, that's going to be very hard. So I think even though that's what people latched onto the most, stop focusing on what he misspoke about and just be quiet. Like, sometimes you just have to shut up and wait until the timing is right. Then you can criticize his French.
I completely agree with you. I think they latched onto the wrong thing. I think the reality is this is going to cost him in Quebec, right? And I think you're completely right. You've got it just bang on. It's funny. You just made me think. Their star in Quebec is Melanie Joly, who is not really well liked by a lot of people right now. So, this might be bad for Carney. But anyway, let's see how his French.
But it's not. It's. My point is, and I'm repeating myself, but my point is to Conservatives out there. He misspoke. His French is bad. Use that to your advantage. Don't focus on what he misspoke on.
Yeah. I got that.
Right? Okay, good. I got that point across.
I completely agree with you. They're focused on the wrong thing. They got one piece of the conversation, but they're not really focused on the fact that he's vulnerable to lose seats in Quebec because his French is not up to par. And we don't think about that much in English Canada. We really don't think about that much in English Canada. When you remember how I said, when we were talking about Bonnie, if some issues are so important for certain demographics that even if they love you and you do poorly on that one issue, then they'll write you off. They won't even listen to you anymore. That's the same thing in Quebec and French, right? So you could be quite amazing on all fronts, but the French isn't there. So you're done. You're on the Dunzo list. Yeah. I don't know. Maybe Mark should take some time and work on his French before going into an election. I don't know. But the point is, he needs to get rid of the carbon tax. That's the most important thing. So what do you think went poorly during the debate. I guess we talked about that a little bit with him speaking. I
Yeah.
also thought it was, not much of a debate. It was quite boring, I would say. But
And
I guess that's what they want. Yeah,
yeah.
that's what they want.
That's the only thing that stuck out to me other than the Brookfield thing, because the Brookfield thing happened it was during the scrum at the end of the English debate. But strategically, I think the debates went as well as you could have liked them because nobody came out of there badly bruised. I mean, we'll see what happens with the Brookfield thing. I think it can be one issue in a puzzle that you build up over time, but that depends on a lot of things. That's a lot of. So we'll see. Like, again, like I think the debates went as well as they could for a party that, you know, was basically dead just a few weeks ago. This election is not going to be a cakewalk for the Conservatives. They are going to have to fight for it. And I think that is a good thing for democracy. At the end of the day, no matter what party I support, competition makes democracy a lot stronger.
For sure. Well, that is it for the Radical Center for today. And me and Cody were sitting around wondering if we're going to have enough to talk about. And we said, oh, maybe it'll be a short episode and we won't have much to talk about because we've been talking all week and we're tired. But it ended up being a pretty long episode. So if you've watched this, we appreciate your attention and your time. Again, moral of the story: the party executive is very powerful. Mark Carney needs to get rid of the carbon tax before the election begins. And we wish you all a wonderful, wonderful week ahead, and to all a good night.
Take care, everyone.